Hello, and welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast, where we learn about the ocean, share sea stories, and explore ocean careers. I'm your host, Kara Muzia. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, mermaids, pirates, ocean lovers, and land lubbers. Welcome to today's show. Today's episode is brought to you by you. Thank you to those of you who have become patrons of the podcast. I want to give a special shout out to our newest patrons, Natasha, Josef, Doug, Jessica, Anne, and Ramona. If you have found value in the podcast, I'd like to invite you to head over to patreon.com/marinebiolife to support the show. For less than the price of a dive tank refill or a cup of coffee, you can help to keep the podcast episodes coming. That's patreon.com/marinebiolife. Question: where do you take a boat when it's sick? To the dock. And I also have some food for thought for you today, courtesy of Ramona. If Hogwarts was in the ocean, they would play Squidditch. Today I'm chatting with founder of Love the Oceans, Francesca Trotman. Growing up in the UK, Francesca knew from an early age that she wanted to be a marine biologist, but it wasn't until she was researching shark finning at university that she found her true calling. Wanting to make a lasting change, Francesca created Love the Oceans, a nonprofit located in Mozambique, Africa. Working with local communities, Francesca hopes to create a sanctioned marine protected area in Jangamo Bay in order to preserve the oceans for generations to come. Join us today as we dive into Francesca's vital research studying humpback whales, manta rays, and whale sharks. Learn how she creates eco-bricks out of marine plastic and works with the local communities to make lasting change and help to make our oceans a better place. At the end of the episode, we also chat about how you can become involved with this incredible organization. Please enjoy. Francesca, welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
I want to jump right in with you because you have a really unique story. You started a nonprofit straight out of university, which is really rare and takes a lot of gumption to do. So could you please tell me the story of what inspired you to start your own nonprofit in a totally different country?
Yeah, no problem. So for me, I kind of got obsessed with the marine environment from quite a young age. I was one of those lucky people that kind of always knew that what they wanted to do just because I knew that I loved the oceans. So I had been obsessed since I think it was my 8th birthday that my mum took me to the London Aquarium, and I loved it. And I was pressed up against the shark tank like a weird little kid. And I learned to dive when I was 13, went to university, did marine biology because that was just the obvious course for me to take. And then at the end of my second year, I took a photography internship in Mozambique, and it was actually in this area that I'm currently in. I was there doing photography, but I saw my first shark killing, so humans killing sharks, and I was really, really angry for 3 days at the fishermen, and then I realised that actually it wasn't the fishermen's fault and they were just trying to make ends meet, and it was actually the fin industry as a whole that I needed to be angry at. And then I wanted to work out how bad the fin industry was in the area, because yes, it's bad if that, it was upsetting to see those individuals being killed, but obviously if that's happening on a very regular basis with lots of different individuals, then you've got a much bigger problem for the marine ecosystem, because sharks are apex predators, so removal of them from an ecosystem is pretty damaging for both the wildlife and the humans. So I went back to university and I decided, so I was doing an integrated master's, which is basically 4 years. You don't have to reapply for your master's year. So I went back into my third year, recruited some research assistants from the year below me, and then I came back to Mozambique, did 4 months research with my research assistants on the shark fin trade here. So I learned about what the shark fin trade was here, and basically spent all that time with the fishermen learning what they were doing and why they were doing it, and then collecting data on the sharks and working out the sustainability of it. And then I wrote my master's on that in my 4th year, and that's basically when I began to get a bigger picture of what was going on, and I was getting the results you would think in terms of the shark fin trade and the sustainability of it. So not sustainable, basically. But I didn't have enough data to get my stats significant, which meant I couldn't publish a paper. So I couldn't do anything about it. So I didn't feel it was something that I could walk away from and just, graduate and then live my life and never look back kind of thing. I actually wanted to do something about it. So I then I actually looked up like charities and nonprofits and all of that kind of stuff. And I looked at how I could get out here financially and practically collect that data. So I couldn't cover the amount of ground physically that we cover with our research and that I was doing with my research assistants. I couldn't continue that database just on my own. And obviously financially, I couldn't just ask people to like pay for flights and live off nothing forever just to collect this data. So I founded Love the Oceans initially to continue that data collection. But the more I read into sustainable strategies, successful conservation strategies, creating long-lasting and culturally integrated change, the more I realized that we needed a multi-pronged approach, and it couldn't just be the stopping the shark finning. So I changed the mission from stopping the shark finning in the area to establishing a marine protected area in this district. We're basically, so further south there's Ponta de Ora Partial Marine Reserve, and further north you have Vilancunas Marine Archipelago. So you've got 2 protected areas, and we're kind of the middle grounds, and it's unprotected. So we're kind of bridging that gap. So what we're now doing is developing a strategy that, because where we are is very typical of the Mozambique coastline, the problems that face the communities that we work with are pretty normal problems for the entire of Mozambique. So developing a conservation strategy that can be replicated up and down the coastline is really important. So that's also part of our entire mission now. So it's more of a holistic approach that will benefit humans and the environment, with the eventual creation of the marine protected area that will be locally managed. So yeah, that's kind of how Love the Oceans came into being and how I did it, in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Yeah, I saw on your website that you actually have a quote from Dr. Sylvia Earle, right? Yes. Her Royal Deepness. And she was applauding your work creating the marine protected area in where your organization is located. So that's pretty awesome. How do you pronounce it? Jangamo?
Yeah, Jangamo.
Okay. And then the bay is, you know what? I'm just going to let you say it because I'm going to totally butcher it. How do you pronounce the bay?
So the whole place is called Jangamo Bay, and Jangamo Bay covers 3 different bays. So we try and work with all 3 communities, but to be honest, we focus on 2 of them because the third one's a little bit further away. So just practically, it's a bit more difficult to get to. But you've got Coconut Bay, which is further away from us. And then we work in very closely with Pandani and Ginjata communities.
Jingasa. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. So are you working with Mission Blue to help create the marine protected area?
Yeah, so we started conversations with Mission Blue a while ago. We're just still struggling with paperwork and things like that, and just the boring admin side in Mozambique. Yeah, so basically Mission Blue have this initiative called Hope Spots, where they kind of, people can nominate areas of the world with specific marine value of some kind. And we put forward all of our research and emailed them and said, like, look, this is what we're doing. We'd love to be a hope spot recognized by Mission Blue. And they were like, yes, this is great. Like, this is what we want from our hope spots, like people there that are eager to continue protecting the area and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, we've been working with them. And then eventually when we get everything together, obviously pandemic slowed things down, but once we get everything together, then Ginjata will be established as Jangamo actually will be established as a hope spot. Yeah.
Hey, Kara here. I hear it all the time. How do I become a marine biologist? Or my niece wants to help the ocean. Where does she even start? I hear from students, yes, and also nurses, HR professionals, and other mid-career folks who wonder if they could still make their dream of working with sea turtles or sharks come true, wondering if it's too late to answer the ocean's call. Here's what I've learned after 20 years in the field and hundreds of interviews. There's no straight line, no magic degree, and no gatekeeper. You create the path forward. If this sounds overwhelming and vague, I've created 2 tools to help you stop wondering what if and start moving forward with clarity and purpose. The first is my free guide, Be a Marine Biologist Without the Degree. Over 1,000 people have already downloaded this guide and taken their first step towards ocean impact. Inside, you'll find 7 concrete, doable actions to help you get started, whether you're just exploring or ready to make a change. Then there's the Ocean Blueprint. This is a 30-day self-paced course that helps you build your unique path into ocean science and conservation without quitting your job or going back to school. Inside the Ocean Blueprint, you'll get daily prompts to explore your interests, skills, and next steps, a structure that turns overwhelm into real momentum, and a bonus section to root your work into ocean connection. You don't have to wait for a degree, a perfect plan, or permission. Whether you're wading in or ready to take the deep dive, these tools are here to help you move from dreaming to doing. The ocean called. Are you ready to answer? Links in the show notes and on my website, karagracemuzia.com. I can't wait to see the waves you'll make. That's amazing. And what does that actually mean? Because there can be different levels. Like there's some protected areas that certain types of fishing are allowed in, and then there's protected areas that absolutely no fishing are allowed, and really like recreational diving is about it. So what are you looking for?
So it's not a no-take zone that we'll be establishing. There might be part of the marine protected area that is a no-take, but that's likely to be an area that isn't too affected by fishermen anyway. Because the problem with no-take zones is that we don't. So the community that we work with needs the sea as a food resource. So we can't just say don't fish anymore, because people will continue to fish because the poverty levels in our area are so high. So we can't do a no-take zone. And also, usually if you have like a no-take zone, the recreational stuff will be banned too, which would also be like the diving and the fishing and loads of different stuff that goes on. And the point of the marine protected area is to transition the community away from unsustainable fishing, and especially shark fishing, over to more sustainable methods of fishing, which still allow them to eat fish and harvest fish, but at a sustainable level that will feed future generations, therefore benefiting humans. But also the MPA will also increase the amount of tourism in the area, which is obviously a sustainable revenue. So we're not looking to stop all activities at all by any stretch. We're looking to basically tighten regs on the types of fishing that can happen. But also there's a large educational component to that, to get everyone on board with that locally and have that locally managed. Because what Mozambique currently suffers with is a huge coastline. It's got over 2,700 kilometers of coastline, and the country doesn't have enough human resources to put a guard every few kilometers to make sure that there's no illegal fishing going on or anything like that. So kind of the top-down approach may not be as effective, but if you have a community managing their own marine assets, that's much more effective. So it's a bottom-up approach that we're taking through the education component and through law change from the top side. So basically some of our scientific research is spatial mapping, so mapping the pressures of fishing in certain areas and what types of fishing that is, and then limiting that types of fishing in certain areas to allow reef to recover, or whatever the issue is, to allow different marine ecosystems to recover within the area, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And that's something that you think about. You're like, okay, we want to create the sanctuary, and then okay, great, you have this regulation that says this is a protected area. But if you don't have an actual regulatory person or community behind it, it doesn't matter. It's just words on a piece of paper, and people can go out and continue on as if it wasn't protected. So, and And that's always a big thing, is like, how do you enforce it? And if you're doing top down, it's really hard to spread your resources up and down a giant coastline like Mozam has, versus, you're right, like a community led approach where the community regulates itself and they can educate others and kind of understand why it's important to protect the resource and that they are farming it, I mean, for lack of a better word, for future generations, not just their generation.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important to have an educational component to this kind of strategy, especially in an area like ours. So we have a 50% illiteracy rate, 75% in women. So even if the law changes, a lot of people can't even read that the law's changed, let alone receive the news in any way, shape, or form, because a lot of people can't afford mobile phones. So it's not like they get a text saying, like, by the way, this is illegal now. Like, they don't, there's no kind of like bulletin board or anything like that for notifications on law change. So the law might change, but the fishermen are likely not to even know that that law has changed. So the educational component is crucial in things like this.
So, what do you do for the educational component? You have a team that goes out in the community and interacts with them and kind of starts to shift their minds a little bit towards a more sustainable approach. What does that look like?
Yeah, so Pascal is our community outreach manager. He's actually from this local area as well. So he's knows the kind of like dynamics and the cultural norms for the area. And then we also work with the elders in each community. So as I said, we kind of focus on the two communities, so Pandani and Genjata communities. Each community has an elder, which is essentially like a mayor. And each of those mayors part owns our project. So it's a community owned project. The community initiatives, the educational components of what we do, basically involve a lot of work with the children and then some work with the adults as well. So we have our marine resource management teaching, which is in lessons in the school. So that's basically free periods in the school that the kids can optionally attend. They're packed lessons, like all the kids attend anyways, and it supplements the national curriculum. So it's got elements of like biology and geography and things like that in there. But we also cover topics like marine conservation and marine protected areas and the pros and cons of marine protected areas and ecotourism and what ecotourism is versus normal tourism. And like all of that kind of stuff. We also cover sea safety. So like riptides and how to get out of a riptide. And all of that's really important because that's the next generation of fishermen, right? They're like 10 to 13 years old. Most kids are considered essentially adults by the time they get to 16 here. A lot of people get married around the age of 15. So people grow up very fast. So working with 13-year-olds and that kind of age group is really crucial. Then the sea safety that I mentioned and talking about riptides, that ties in with our practical work. So every Saturday we run free swimming lessons for all of the kids in the community, 4 to 18-year-olds. We would do more, but it's literally just we're at capacity at the moment, and you've got to draw a line somewhere on like the number of people that you're teaching and the age groups and stuff,
Right.
because over 95% of people can't swim in our area, and we are coastal, obviously. We have a very strong riptide. There's been 13 drownings in the last 2 years in this region.
Oh my
Not even in
gosh.
this region, in just Ginjata Bay, there's been 13 drownings in the last 2 years. Ginjata is one of the 3 bays that we work in. So that's a really bad problem because you basically got, if you imagine you can't swim and none of your family and friends can't swim, and then anytime anyone goes in the ocean, they die. You can imagine that that's going to give you a very negative view of the ocean and basically just mean that you're scared of it, right?
Right.
And people don't want to protect stuff that they're scared of. So basically what the swimming is teaching kids to swim from basic levels. So we have like beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and the kids progress through those. Once they get to advanced, they're given the opportunity to become what we call an ocean conservation champion. So usually kids are around like 16 to 18 by the time they reach this stage. And an ocean conservation champion is given the opportunity to do further qualifications. So that can be swimming instructors, surfing, diving, skipper, that kind of all marine industries. And those are really important because with the creation of the marine protected area, the job creation is going to be within the marine industry with the boom of tourism that we expect to get from the creation of the marine protected area. So the employment will be in that space. So having those skills means that they can get a job, and that helps alleviate poverty. Poverty alleviation helps conservation, because people will have the financial luxury to think more about conservation. And then on top of that, the ocean conservation champions, they also become ambassadors within their community and run their own workshops on conservation and sustainability, which also means that that's Mozambicans teaching Mozambicans. That's culturally integrated, long-lasting change. The vision of Love the Oceans is that we eventually don't need to be here anymore. It's a sustainable model. So yes, right now we're helping provide some of the skills and the knowledge around marine protected areas creation and management. But the idea is that we don't have to be here anymore. So then the last, just finishing off the educational component, so the last thing that we do, well, actually two things really, is working with the adults. So we run workshops with the active fishermen, so you're talking slightly older people, like fully fledged adults, about sustainability. So that can be things like turtles and nesting, because we have turtles nesting in this area, but it can also be like methods of fishing and sustainability in terms of like gill nets versus spearfishing and things like that. And then we also work with alternative livelihoods. So basically, we're helping develop sustainable projects like aquaponics and agriculture development, and sustainable honey harvesting, encouraging people to, and providing the tools and the initial investment as well, to create another industry that provides a source of income which gives people the financial luxury not to fish anymore, and it relieves the fishing pressure. So a lot of our work is that you can like hear from what I'm saying is basically thinking of like conservation measures, but then thinking of the socioeconomic factors that can stand in someone's way for reaching that.
Right. And that's a really important point to make, is that with regulations, you know, it's people that their whole livelihood is in the ocean or in the water, and this is what they do. And this is probably what they've done for generations and generations. And this isn't unique to Mozambique or Africa. Like there's communities in the US that are like this. They fish or shrimp because that's what they've done for generations, and they don't know what else to do. So by providing, one, the education of more sustainable practices, and then two, different options, seems like that's the way to make a bigger lasting change. So that's wonderful. But this isn't all y'all do. You guys have a really amazing research aspect that's actually in the ocean. I took some time and I was like, man, this is some really awesome programs. So you have fisheries, coral reefs, you got megafauna, and ocean trash. I wanted to go through and do like a synopsis of what each of these looks like. So we can start with the fisheries one, because it's kind of what we're on already. You said you survey 2 or 3 sites. Now, are you working again with the locals and you're kind of recording what they're catching, or are these your volunteers or staff members going out into the water and recording their observations in the water?
It's working with the locals and recording what the local community are catching, what size, what species, what sex, if it's possible to sex them, and then what method as well. So the most popular methods of fishing here are gill netting, which is monofilament nets, really unsustainable, and that's probably the most popular method of fishing. And then we have an active shark long line that goes out, which is very unsustainable. And then we have a lot of like spear fishermen and kayak and pole line, which is more like what we're trying to move people towards as well, because that's one of the much more sustainable methods of fishing.
And really quick, gill netting and long lining are unsustainable because of the massive amounts of bycatch that occurs with these fishing methods.
Yeah, so the gill netting, it's literally, so here the nets have floats, which are just flip-flops that are ocean trash, tied to the top of the net, and then rocks on the bottom of the net, which weighs it down. So you've got like essentially this net that has quite a small mesh size going the entire length of the water column, and then that net can be like 100 meters long, and anything that swims into that dies. So like mantas, dolphins, turtles, whales, literally anything. that swims into that dies. And the fishermen are using that method of catch because it's a easy method of catch. So you put the net out, then you row back to shore, and then done, right? Then you just go out a couple of hours later and collect whatever it's got. So it means that a lot of people can like go and do other jobs and things like that in that time. It requires less effort, but it catches a lot more bycatch. The fishermen aren't aiming to get those turtles or those dolphins or those mantas or whatever, but they are as a result of using that type of fishing. So we're trying to transition people away from the gill net fishing. The long line fishing is unsustainable because it targets pelagic sharks. So basically you have a couple of buoy lines, a long line between the buoy lines, and then off that long line you've got lots and lots of smaller lines with hooks on that are baited. That sinks to about halfway through the water column, sometimes about 10 meters deep, maybe a bit deeper, and those baited hooks bring in a lot of sharks. So the sharks then bite onto those hooks, get stuck there, they die, they drown. They even get munched on by other sharks because sharks are cannibals. And then they're pulled to the surface, they're pulled into the boat, the hook is rebaited right there and then and redeployed. So the long line actually never comes out of the water. It's just literally sharks taken off, rebaited and put back in. And that's unsustainable because shark fishing is unsustainable generally because of their life strategy. So they're slow growing, they don't give birth to that many young. So they have a vulnerable population. They're easily exploited, and their population can be pushed into the vulnerable or endangered zone very easily, which a lot of the species that are caught here are vulnerable or endangered. So yeah, that's why those two methods of fishing in particular are pretty unsustainable.
What are a couple of the more popular shark species that are caught, or the more frequent, I should say?
So the most common species of shark that's caught is the scalloped hammerhead shark, which its fin, from what I understand, its fin's worth quite a lot of money. And then we have bull sharks that are caught quite regularly, and tiger sharks that are caught semi-regularly. Yeah, those are probably like the most common ones. Hammerheads are very common. And then bull sharks, yeah, probably second, and then tigers probably third.
Okay. What happens to all this data that you're collecting? You bring it back, you put it in a computer database, whatever. Does the government see this, or are you guys kind of storing it away for future publications, or?
Yeah, so at the moment we're storing it away for future publications. We think we need 7 years of data to be able to publish a paper on the fisheries, in particular the long line, and the sustainability of it. Obviously, COVID's kind of messed with that plan a little bit, but we hope to be able to publish soon anyways. That data will also be shown to the government, and we plan that will be one of the bigger ways of creating a marine protected area and planning it accordingly. And that will help us develop because like obviously the marine protected area actual establishment is one thing, like saying this area is protected, that's lovely, but what does that actually mean in terms of like fishing regs and things like that? So development of all of that type of stuff will need to come off the back of the research. So yeah, publications, but then also those publications will be used in actual strategy and law development, legislation development for the area.
Very cool. So what are some of the other things that you guys are working on? Coral reefs. It's got a little soft spot for coral reefs. So what does a reef survey look like, and how many sites do you go out to?
So we use an adapted version of Reef Life Survey, which is basically, so we use a 25-meter transect line, and we deploy that, we swim around it, like 5 meters out, 5 meters up with our GoPro faced forward, swim a loop around it, and that's looking at non-cryptic species, like species that can swim off essentially away from you. So your snappers and things like that. And then we do another swim around the transect line that's 2 meters up and 1 meter out, and that's looking at things that are cryptic, so they don't really move. So you're looking at your echinoderms, so that's your sea stars and your sea cucumbers, your sea urchins, and then sometimes like eels and things like that, stuff that doesn't really move that much. And then we do photo quadrats as well along the transect, and those are looking at actual benthic cover, so benthic cover, seabed cover. So what actually is a substrate that we're looking at? So that can be, because it's very different. So basically, coral polyps colonize bare rock, right? So if you're taking a quadrat, which is just a square, and it's a square split into smaller squares, so you can estimate the percentage cover roughly of an area. And we take photos of that square over the seabed every 2.5 meters along our transect. So looking at that, it's very different if you have like 50% coral coverage and then 50% bare rock versus 50% coral coverage and 50% ascidian cover. For instance, ascidians being a competitor to coral. Ascidians also, and sponges, they both cover, they both colonize bare rock, which means that they would outcompete coral. So if they've colonized that area of rock already, the coral can't colonize that area. So it changes the potential for the coral to continue growth in that area, continue colonization. So it's important to know about the competitors of the reef as well, the reef system as well. So yeah, and then we take GPS points of wherever we are doing the survey, and then we can repeat the sites that we're at. We operate at a lot of the local dive sites here, which is an interesting perspective as well, because it brings into play the kind of human wildlife conflict and what damage divers can do to reefs and things like that. So it's another area that we're kind of looking at on the sidelines. So I can't actually remember the number of sites that so there's a few different sites that we have like names for, but then within those sites you can do loads of different surveys.
Gotcha. So you have like big main areas that you cover, and then within those areas you'll do different transects and just kind of pick up and drop as you go along.
Yeah, exactly. As long as we've got the GPS points, then we at least know where that's happening.
What are some of the impacts that you've seen from the dive sites, the human impacts?
There's a theory that we're working on at the moment, which is the manta rays, to do with the manta rays. So basically, there's this reef here called Manta Reef, which if you Google diving in Mozambique, it almost always comes up and everyone goes on about it. Everyone wants to see it. You've got boats driving from, there's a town further up north from us called Tofu that's very popular with diving. People drive 40 minutes to this dive site. For us, it's about 10 minutes from us. Personally, it's not my favorite dive site in the area, but it is the dive site that people bang on about when they talk about Mozambique. It's called Manta Reef, and that's because it used to have loads and loads and loads of mantas. You would almost always be guaranteed to see a manta when you went there. Now, in the last, I would say 4 to 5 years, the manta numbers have dropped off quick, really, really, really steep decline in the number of manta sightings. Now you're lucky if you see a manta in 5 dives there. So the question is why. We still have our whale sharks in fairly large numbers here, seen on a pretty regular basis, and whale sharks are also filter feeders feeding off zooplankton blooms. So we don't think it's zooplankton blooms. Also, there are a few mantas further north, but they seem to have left there as well, which is a more touristy area, more dived area. There are a lot of mantas still a bit further south of us. I think there was 700 sightings in actual IDs, not even sightings, just IDs of individuals in a season just further south from us. So yeah, there's plenty of mantas around. It's just a question of knowing where they are. So then the question is, why aren't they going to Manta Reef anymore? The reason that they were going there in the first place was because of the formation of the reef. You have these plateaus of coral, big flat areas of coral, which mantas use for cleaning stations. Mantas can spend up to 8 hours cleaning a day, and basically they just hover over these cleaning stations, and the wrasse go in their mouths, and butterfly fish and loads of different fish that all live on this coral reef. They come up and they clean the manta. And they can hover there, which is great, and it's amazing to see these animals get clean like that. Now the problem is that humans don't realize that we're really big and we're pretty noisy underwater because of the bubbles, and quite scary because animals aren't used to us, right? So if the mantas aren't there, a lot of people just swim over the reef just looking at the cool animals and stuff, but they don't realize that their presence alone actually scares a lot of animals off.
Hmm.
So if a human swims through a cleaning station by accident, and that happens repeatedly, which for a popular site like Manta Reef, that does happen a lot, especially if there's really no kind of education around cleaning stations, what they look like, and why not to swim through them. You then have a situation where the wrasse, the butterfly fish, all of the fish that are cleaning that manta, they get scared, they leave that coral, reef, and they go live somewhere else. And that coral reef then dies because it doesn't have the animals maintaining it anymore that it needs. And that can mean that the mantas don't return there anymore. So it's this human wildlife conflict potentially as a result of irresponsible diving. We don't know that's for certain. We need to collect a lot more data before we can actually know that's for certain at all. And that's obviously a very difficult hypothesis to prove because no one is willing to admit that they swim through a cleaning station. So it's extremely difficult to get data on. We don't know if we will ever prove it, but we have an underwater drone here that we were sponsored by Open ROV, and we can deploy that on different sites. So we've been trying to find some new manta cleaning stations, and basically other areas that the mantas could have moved to, because we know that they are around. It's just a question of why they've left the area and where they've gone, whether they have left the area or whether they're just on a different site that we don't even know about, because where we are is very off the beaten track. So there's plenty of dive sites, or coral reefs that we haven't even dived. They've never been dived, they haven't even been discovered yet. So there's a lot of investigating to do, and also we know that it's not because the mantas are being caught, because we have the fisheries data set for the area, so we know that they're not being caught at an unreasonable rate in the area. So it's just basically developing the hypotheses of that.
Really interesting. So this is all part of the coral reefs, and this is where you've noticed manta stuff, but you also do megafauna research and surveys. And we just chatted a little bit about mantas, and the whale sharks. We also get migrating humpbacks. Will you chat a little about what a survey for all three of them may look like? Because that's pretty unique area that you're in to have all three of those species. It's awesome.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We have the flagship species, which is why we're pretty confident the marine protected area will work here. That the whole kind of strategy that we've developed. So for mantas and whale sharks, it's a similar kind of survey. So obviously we're collecting data on sightings in terms of like, you see a whale shark, great, whereabouts, any kind of data on it, so like size or sex or anything like that. That's all really great information, but actually being able to ID the individual can really help too, so we can get an idea of the population of the area. And it's a similar process for whale sharks and mantas for that. For manta rays, it's the spot formation on the belly of the manta ray, and then for whale sharks, we use the left-hand side of the whale shark. That's just our database. But we use the left-hand side of the whale shark between the gill slits and the end of the pectoral fin. That spot formation there, that's unique to each whale shark. So you can ID a whale shark from that. For humpback whales, it's the tail fluke of the humpback whale. That's unique to each humpback whale. That's a slightly more difficult data set for us, because you can't get that data in the water, because the water can distort the coloration for the humpback whale. And that's part of the IDing process of the tail. You need the coloration of the whale tail. So the whale tail has to be out of the water, which whales are pretty quick moving. Whale sharks are pretty slow. Mantas are pretty slow. Whales are rapid. So it's pretty difficult to get IDs on them. So that's one of the things that we do, but we also are collecting vocalization data on humpback whales in the area. So basically we have a hydrophone that we deploy over the boat. We had some stationary pods that we were using last year, but we had to give them back to the university. But basically the hydrophone is an underwater microphone that records everything underwater. but we're using it for humpback whales and dolphins a little bit too. And with this, we can record the song. So, well, we're looking at all vocalizations really, but in our area we have mother and calf pairs, and then we have mating pods. So the humpback whales come to our area to mate and give birth, but they don't feed or anything like that where we are. So the males are the singers for humpback whales. Females don't sing. They make like kind of grunts and moans and drum kind of sounds to their calves and vice versa, but not the like classic singing that you get on like yoga tapes.
Not the whale song.
Yeah, not the whale song. That's your male humpback whales. It's thought that that's because of courtship, but there's like no one actually knows. So that's part of the reason that we're collecting it. We're linking surface behavior, what we're seeing on the surface, to what we're hearing underneath the water. But the limitation of that study is that it's really, we have so many humpback whales here, right? You can be surrounded by like 8 humpback whales at once. And so putting one hydrophone in the water, it's extremely difficult to work out which individual is making that noise, and therefore what behavior is relevant to that vocalization. So that's quite a big limitation. So what we've actually been looking at now is the song and what it's made up of. So you have a humpback whale song, and then within that song you have themes and phrases. And you can, so each pod has its own song, and then when pods come into contact with each other, they swap part of their song. So it's basically like one of the most basic forms of cultural transmission in the animal kingdom. But essentially, you can then, using those that vocalization data, you can actually track where those whales have come from. So we work with loads of different NGOs. So there's like 5 different countries, maybe 5 different countries that we work with, where there's NGOs deploying hydrophones on the same dates, the same time that we are, and all of that kind of stuff, recording humpback whale song, and then breaking that phrase down and publishing a paper together, breaking the song down into phrases and looking at the composition, and then looking at migration patterns with humpback whales. And that can also be used to establish the marine protected area in our area, if we can prove that it's a crucial ground for the humpback whales, which we know it is, but it's just a case of getting the data, as well as the IDs from the individuals as well. So the IDs of the whales, the whale sharks, and the manta rays, being able to prove that there are these incredible flagship species that people travel all over the world to see, being able to prove that we have them in our area in fairly large numbers, and that we can pretty much guarantee a tourist sighting of a whale during high season. That's really important data to be able to give the financial incentive for the marine protected area.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did see that your goal is to be able to provide the data that these animals are ecotourism assets. And I mean, if you're sitting there and one of your problems is you can't identify which whale the song is coming from because you're surrounded by 8 humpback whales, it seems like a really good case for that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So your kind of like final mission was the ocean trash, which I mean, it's just an issue worldwide, oceans worldwide, even forests worldwide. And I think it's really interesting that you guys actually categorize what you find. What are some of the more common things that you do find on the beach? And can you tell if they're local, or are they washing up from far distant shores?
I was actually just having a conversation with one of the dive instructors in the area about other things we can do with the trash that we collect. One of the most common things is bottle caps, which, to be honest, is really scary, because we collect in 40 minutes, in a 40-minute walk last year, our volunteers collected over 1,000 bottle caps. And what's scary about that is that the bottles are somewhere.
Right.
Not on the shore, but they are definitely still in the water, because it's not like we're just chucking away bottle caps without the bottles.
Right.
So that always terrifies me, because every time I pick up a bottle cap, I'm like, oh, where is the bottle? So with the bottle caps, we can't really tell if they're local or international. We've had a trash wash up like last week, I think it was. I did a beach clean, and we had like brands, Indonesian brands, washing up on our shores and stuff. Obviously,
Mm.
that could have come off a boat. I don't know that it's definitely come from Indonesia, but it's perfectly possible that it has as well, because the way that the currents work where we are, we basically have the currents coming through from Indo-Pacific right over to cracking over the top of Madagascar and then down through the Mozambique Channel. So it's perfectly possible that the trash can come across. It will take about 3 years to come across from Indonesia to us, which
Mm-hmm.
is very feasible time for plastic,
Mm-hmm.
considering that it lasts like 450 years. So 3 years is nothing in its life cycle.
Right.
So yeah, we have a lot of bottle caps. Anything with branding, I try and like take photos of to try and shame the brand into thinking about potentially more like eco-friendly packaging. We had Coke and Nestle come up last week in our beach clean, which isn't very surprising considering how widespread those brands are.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get cigarette butts. I know that the cigarette butts we get are local. We get that's much more popular in, well, not popular, but it's much more common in tourist season,
Hmm.
because a lot of people smoke on the beach and then just leave their butts there,
Yep,
which
use it
gives
like a
me
giant ashtray. We have the
so,
same problem in Florida, and it
yes,
blows my mind.
yeah, it gives me a quite bad rage.
Yes.
um, and then what else do we have? Toothbrushes, very common.
Mm.
Plastic toothbrushes
Mm-hmm.
and flip flops, shoes. I found a whole trainer in my beach clean the other day.
Oh my gosh.
Um, yeah, that's not uncommon. After like we have sporadic cyclones here because we're in the cyclone region, and after we have cyclones and stuff, there's so much more trash that washes up.
Yes.
But we also have like the river further north that dumps into the sea, and obviously trash is a big, like, it accumulates in river systems then just ends up in the ocean. Um, so that will also be a contributor. So there will be some trash from inland, but we think a lot of it is international as well.
Mm. Yeah, I see that as well. Here we'll get trash from the Caribbean just because of how the currents work here. So it's really interesting to see and to see how we're all connected, and then it's really frustrating at the same time.
Mm.
I saw that you guys do eco bricks with some of the garbage that you collect. Could you explain what an eco brick is and how it kind of helps the local community or how it gets them involved?
Yeah, so an eco brick, for us, so there's varying different types of eco bricks. When you Google eco bricks, there's a few different types that come up. But basically, for us, what we do is we collect the beach trash. Then, and this is literally what I've got to do this week. It's just very time consuming and manual labor. But essentially, what it is, you collect the trash, you cut it up, you clean it, you dry it, and then we collect 2 litre plastic bottles from the local resorts here. So like Coca-Cola bottles and Sparletta bottles are the most common types of like big 2 litre bottles that are thrown out by the resorts. So we go and collect those, we wash them, we dry them, and then we pack all the trash as tightly as possible into those bottles. They have to meet a minimum weight. So for us, that's 0.6 kgs. And when it meets that weight, it's like really, really sturdy. You can't squish it. There's no space in there. Like, it's hard. And those, then we glue the tops on, and then that forms a brick. So those bricks can then be used in construction work, and we use them in our local construction work. They are quite labor intensive, take a while to build. If I just do one on my own, it can take like 4 to 5 hours of just
Mm.
cutting and packing. So we're trying to now come up with like new snazzy ideas of how to speed things up, and I really want to get like a meat grinder and then just put the plastic through it.
There you go.
But, yeah, still thinking on that one.
Very resourceful. I mean, there's so many different projects that you have, and your doors are open to, well, I mean, pandemic aside, your doors are usually open to everyone in the whole world. So if people want to get involved with Love the Oceans, what does that look like?
So we've actually got a few different programs. So when we can all travel again, you're welcome to come out and see what we do. Basically, we have our 5-week program, which is for people that are students studying a related subject at university. And then we have our 2-week program, which is open to the public. We have our 3-week program, which is for career changes and for people like taking a sabbatical, want to get some experience in marine biology. It's basically a crash course in marine biology, designed for people that don't have the background training in the subject area. And then we have our swimming program. So we work with a charity called Swim Taika. So basically swim instructors come out and help us during the winter holidays with the kids. And when the kids aren't at school, we can teach swimming all day, but it's fairly lengthy days. So we rope in some extra instructors for those holidays and teach as many kids as we can swimming. And then we also have our Photographers Without Borders partners. They basically come out and they have a professional photographer and videographer. Jeffrey Garriock's been doing it for the last couple of years. He's absolutely amazing, worked with some incredible brands like Nat Geo and stuff, and he leads those workshops. The photographers learn from them. It's not about how to take a photo, it's about how to use your photography to tell a story and change the world. And then they document what all of the work that we're doing. So it's kind of like a media experiencing NGO kind of thing, where they can document what we're doing. They learn about what we're doing, but they document it through. So we've got like a few different ways that we also work with some schools, and we also take like groups as well. So like dive school groups and stuff like that, group travel. And then all of those trips fund our research. So we're a non-profit, and we're very transparent about all of that kind of stuff. We have basically something for everyone. Obviously with this pandemic, it's affected a lot of things. So at the moment we're running some online campaigns, so people can go online and check out our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of that. It's just at Love the Oceans.
Love it. Perfect. Thank you. I have a couple more questions before we officially wrap up here. One of my very favorite questions to ask is, what is your favorite field story or stories to tell? And I know, spending a lot of time out on the water, you probably have a lot of really memorable moments. So this could be like a favorite interaction with wildlife, or just a day that everything went right, or just, oh my goodness, everything went wrong that day, but it's a really great story now.
Probably humpback whales. It's difficult to choose, really. We're really lucky. We've got so many amazing animals, and like that each sighting is really special for me for different reasons. Like I had my first living, so usually I've seen so many scalloped hammerheads killed in the fisheries, but not any alive in the water swimming around. So I saw my first one of them, I think it was last year or the year before, swimming alive on the surface, and that was like a really big moment for me, but wasn't a spectacular sighting in terms of global diving. I think the humpback whales are probably our biggest and best sightings that we have here. We had probably most memorable last year, or maybe the year before. We went out on the boat. We had 2 photographers with us from Photographers Without Borders, and the weather was due to turn bad the next day, and we didn't know how bad it would be, like how long it would be bad for. So we wanted to just get out. So we went out later than we usually would, and it was pretty rough. It wasn't like the nicest conditions in the world, but we tend to see more humpback whales when the water's a bit rougher. So we went out, and we went far out the back line, and much further than we normally would. And we were just minding our own business, going at like a little, it wasn't particularly fast, but we were just going at a steady pace. And then this whale comes up behind the boat, and the whales are just so broad. Like it takes my breath away whenever I see a whale from the front or the back, and it just comes out the water just swimming along, because it's just so broad. And they're just massive. Like the whales here, 36 tons, like they're massive things, 16 meters long. And this I think it was a male, came out of the water just behind the boat, and I was like, Jay, my friend was driving, and I was like, Jay, you need to speed up, the whale's right behind the boat. And he was like, I can't, there's whales in front of the boat. And I looked forward, and the same thing was happening in front of the boat, and then each side of the boat as well, the whales came up, so we were fully surrounded, and we had to keep the boat at a like absolutely constant pace. And it was a mating pod, and the mating pods are pretty they can get really, really rough. So basically what you have is like all of these males chasing this female for like 3 days, and the mating is down to female selection, and the males can like jump on each other and friggin' like kill each other during these 3 days. Like it's really, really brutal. And we'd like,
and you're right there in the middle of it.
In the middle of it. And there's like 3 of the males just like breaching left, right, and center. Like I've actually got a photo just on my iPhone. Like it's a terrible photo quality, but it was just an insane moment where 3 of them jumped out of the water all at the same time, and I was like, what is going on right now? And I'm like kind of losing it because I'm like really nervous with the whale behind us. I don't want it to like, because they can damage themselves on their props, but they can also knock the engines off the boat, and we're pretty far out back, so if something happens, we're kind of screwed. So I'm like, and the photographers are going mental. Obviously, they're just like click, 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 click. And the whale behavior, like it's fairly predictable when they start breaching, because they breach, they go down, they breach again. And after a while, when you spend a lot of time with these animals, you can kind of predict where they're going to be coming up out of the water. Okay. So I was just pointing out to the photographers like, and there, and there, and there, and the photographers would like line up their shot and got some really amazing footage, probably the best footage that we've ever had of whales in the area taken from the boat. And that was probably my number one encounter. That was just like pretty incredible. And like just to be surrounded by so many of them, and it was almost like we were a whale, kind of, because we were like right in the middle of the pod. It's very cool.
That's amazing. One of the pod. What a cool story. What a cool experience.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, you've done a lot, and I mean, you've moved from the UK to Mozambique, which is a huge leap. What are some of the, I mean, I feel like you could probably write a novel on this, but like, what are 1 or 2 of the bigger challenges that you have faced? And this could be like personally or professionally, or just kind of challenges with trying to do what you're doing.
We've been really lucky. The local community is a dream here. So we haven't faced any problems in terms of like our work and all of that kind of stuff. And personally, like it's always been really friendly. So I never had any of those kind of problems. Probably explaining to friends and family what I do and why it's so important, and especially if those friends and family are like UK based or USA based, but based in a country that's more developed. Trying to explain like what I do is quite difficult, and trying to get people to understand why it's important, and we all need to care about the oceans. That's always a challenge. And I guess we've struggled a fair amount with the expat community here, and trying to get people on board and working together as a team, because ultimately that's what you need for successful conservation, trying to get people on board with ethical interactions with marine animals, and get people to kind of all abide by the same rules and rules and regulations when it comes to driving on the beach or interacting with the animals, because unfortunately there is a lot of driving on the beach here, which obviously is lethal for turtle nesting. So trying to get people not to drive.
Education. Education on all fronts is the biggest challenge. I feel like it's a very common challenge that most people face.
Yeah.
It's trying to educate others. I like to end each episode on a conservation ask for the audience. And we kind of touched on it already during the show, but what is your ask for the audience to go forth and do after listening to this?
I think my ask for the audience would be to consume less. So by that I mean consuming less plastic, consuming less needless products. So whether that be fast fashion, or whether that be packaging, or even just products that you just don't need. Think about before you buy it and think, do I really need this? Not only will thinking that save you money, but also the amount of energy and resources that go into creating those products. It's an environmental strain, and the world is suffering with overpopulation, and the main problem with overpopulation is overconsumption, and we just can't create enough and at a rate that is still sustainable for the world. So yeah, consuming less would be my ask, I think.
It's a great ask. I'm gonna tack one on there. Get a reusable water bottle and use it.
Oh yeah,
wonderful. So if the audience wants to, where can they find you, connect with you, and love the oceans?
So if they want to connect with us, then please follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all of those kind of platforms. We're on LinkedIn too. We're just at Love the Oceans, so super easy to find. And you'll see all of our campaigns that we're running during COVID when travel's not allowed, and we'll also be posting any updates that we possibly can during the COVID situation to let you know what we're up to.
Thanks. And I'll put a link to all of that in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Well, Francesca, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed our chat today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I'd love to hear any insight you've gleaned. Leave a comment in the show notes or send me an email over at marinebio.life. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and of course, share with your friends. If you want more resources for ocean news, including conservation topics and careers, plus personal insight from me that I just don't share anywhere else, join me at marinebio.life and sign up for email updates. Keep after your dreams and making waves in your community. One person can make a difference. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast.